Good evening to all of you and welcome. My name is Andrea and I work on the marketing team here at the Strand. We're really happy to have you here tonight for another week, beginning of a week of another wonderful lineup of virtual events. But before we start our discussion with Kate about her new book, True Story, I wanted to share a little bit with you about the Strand in case you don't know about us. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until after 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We wanted to take a moment to thank you all for your support, especially this year, because we know without our loyal community of book lovers, we wouldn't be where we are today. Tonight, we're discussing Kate Reed Petty's new book, True Story. Kate has been recognized with the Narrative Magazine 30 Below Award, as well as grants and scholarships from the Robert Deutsch, I'm tongue-tied tonight, I'm so sorry, Robert Deutsch Foundation, the Mount, Bloedel Reserve, and the Sewanee Writers Conference. Her short story has been published in Electric Literature, American Short Fiction, Blackbird, Ambit, Brut, and Los Angeles Review of Books. She has a Master's of Letters from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, and she lives in Baltimore. Tonight, Kate will be joined by Thao, who is a musician, songwriter, producer, and leader of the band Thao and the Get Down, Stay Down. She has recorded and toured nationally and internationally over the past 15 years. Her latest album, Temple, was released in May on Ribbon Music. She was the 2019 guest host of Song Exploder and the 2004 to 2006 college roommate of Kate Reed Petty. Just a reminder that we are going to take your questions at the end of the night, so make sure you submit them throughout the discussion. And now, without further ado, Kate Reed Petty and Thao Nguyen.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
That was so fun.
Hey.
To be hidden and then reveal ourselves on the stage.
We should have choreographed that better. I was late.
You're right on time. It's perfect. I want to, before we start talking, I just want to say hello to the audience, everybody in the chat box. Thank you so much for being here. Andrea kind of queued us up with a little bit of an icebreaker about coming in from, saying where you're from and also what book you've been reading lately. And I just wanted to second that recommendation. I feel like the chat box, the thing that I really miss right now is being in a bookstore with other people and like meeting the other readers at the same time. Can't do that. I'm excited to be able to talk to my dear friend who lives across the country, so that's one advantage, but maybe we can recreate a little bit of that feeling of being in the same room together through the chat box. So I just want to encourage you, don't be shy. Also, the other thing I was thinking about is the Strand bookstore has such a beautiful, like just like a sea of tables of like well curated books and like thoughtful things to browse. It's such an amazing place to be. And so if you put your book recommendations in the chat box, we can feel a little bit like we're in the actual Strand and discovering books from each other. So don't be shy. Maybe I'll start out with a reading, Thao, and then we'll start talking. Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Cool. So this is from the very beginning of the book. It's from a section called Lax World, and I don't think I need to introduce too much for those of you who haven't read the book yet. This is in the voice of a character named Nick. In the fall of our senior year, my buddy, Max Platt, was arrested for shining a laser pointer at an airplane. We didn't even know this was illegal. It was one of the least bad things Max ever did, and it was hilarious that it ended up being the thing he got in trouble for. This was still a few months before the whole thing with the private school girl. We were at Denny's when we heard the story, of course. The lacrosse team practically owned Denny's. But that night it was just Max and me and my old buddy, Richard Roth. Been doing it since August, Max said. He'd cut class, go out to the empty field behind the auditorium, and lie on the sandy grass, pointing the red light at the sky, slowly waving it back and forth. Like the bat signal, Max said. Really, Richard said. It always got under my skin how Richard was so impressed with Max, so I said, but why, Batman? What's the point? Fucks with the pilots, Max said. Max did a lot of things we wished we had the balls for, but this one, personally, I never understood the appeal. He told the story again at practice. The story was better with all of us there. Max stood up and did his impression of the cop who caught him. "What are you doing?" he said in a big Yosemite Sam voice. He waddled around with his hands out to the side, like he was too fat to put his arms all the way down. I will say, I always regret that saying a big Yosemite Sam voice, because I can't do a Yosemite Sam voice for this reading. Imagine it was a Yosemite Sam voice. "I slipped and fell," I shouted, Max said, or I tried to shout. I don't know. I was so high, who knows? I put my hands up over my head. They felt like jelly, like I was moving them through jelly. We all nodded like we knew what he meant, like we'd all been too high to raise our arms, even though I knew for a fact some of those guys had never smoked. The cop goes, "Get over here, son, put your arms down." I just leave my bowl in the grass. He never checked, too lazy to walk 100 feet, Max said. He had no fucking clue. We were all cracking up listening to the story. The cop had no clue Max was high. We shook our heads. "Cops are such dumbasses," I said. Everyone laughed. But the next Monday, Max wasn't at practice. He was suspended. Coach told us the laser pointer thing was actually a federal crime, a $250,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. We were all super low that day. The state championships were only 8 months away. We wondered if Max would be in prison then. We wondered if he would tell the FBI that we smoked weed. For a while, we discussed nothing else, jogging in anxious circles around the track. But in the end, nothing really happened. We were only 17, and Max's dad was a CPA, so maybe he knew a good lawyer. Max didn't even have to do community service. He was put on probation and had to check in with a cop every month for a year. That was basically it. The only other thing was that he had to get up in front of the whole school and give a speech about the dangers of laser pointers. It was, of course, hilarious. "Say it with me. Watch where you stick your pointer," Max said, pointing his thumb over the podium like Bill Clinton. And everyone in the auditorium said it with him. "Watch where you stick your pointer." Mr. Kaminsky, the English teacher, tried to step in. "Thank you, Max, that's enough." But the whole school just kept chanting it. "Watch where you stick your pointer. Watch where you stick your pointer." In the end, it took 2 administrators to quiet everyone down, Max grinning on stage the whole time. We sat in the back and cheered him on. We knew that he was with us again. The only thing was that now he had a record, so he couldn't get caught again. But we didn't think that would be a problem. If we could get out of a felony, we could get out of anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much for starting us off. And I'll say that it's such an honor to get to talk to you about your novel, and I'm so proud of you. Sorry, this is clearly, we're good, very good friends, and we're old friends, so I'm just gonna take this angle. I'm just so happy for you, and I just love what you made. And this is my first book talk, so we're, I don't even know typically what one would expect, and so I'm not even going to be concerned with those guidelines.
Love it. Thank you so much for saying so. I remember telling you, I just want to publish something. You've known me for so long, so it means a lot to.
Oh my God. I'll say I have some. I never call you by your name, but I'll do it now so I don't confuse people. But I have so many questions around that as well, and this is such a celebration for us. I think just to be able to virtually gather here and honor you and honor your work. And anyway, okay. So my first question with that passage is when I was immediately captivated, but I remember distinctly, not just because I recently read the book, but I vividly remember the moment of the pages you read, feeling so uncomfortable. And I wondered if that, I wanted you to talk about your intention in having that passage be the one that you share. And also, I feel like you intended that discomfort. So I wanted you to talk about it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's such a, it's a hard thing to say, you want readers to be uncomfortable. And I feel bad about also sort of wanting to punish the characters or to sort of create characters who are in such a vile situation, and to write in that situation as well. But yeah, I started out writing Nick, who's the character who's just reading, kind of like for vengeance. Like I was sort of imagining writing this character, and I kind of wanted to show him as ultimately like very misguided and kind of swayed by the group that he wants to be a part of. Like his sort of like the myopia that he experiences because he wants to be part of this team, and the things that he does that are really harmful and violent because of that, I started out sort of thinking about in that space. But I also, and I guess I sort of like to share that sort of first little section so that people know what the book is about, or sort of know the taste of what the book comes from. But the book does sort of go to new, Nick does become something different, which I think is, which I also feel weird about. Like he becomes a character that I also really like, even though I sort of started out wanting to punish him. I feel a lot of empathy for him as a character. So anyway, it's just a tricky thing as a writer to be like, yeah, I want to look at these really ugly things. And also, I think if you estrange it too much, it feels like it's not part of us. And it actually is part of the culture that I know I grew up in. I know you grew up in Virginia. Like we're all sort of like baked in this at the same time. So
right.
I do hope people feel uncomfortable, but.
Okay, great. And I wanted to say, the way you've captured it, I was so uncomfortable because I felt like I was back in Virginia, in high school or middle school, or in that scenario. It's just so vivid, and I applaud you for for capturing it with such fidelity. I'm going to err on the side of assuming that not everyone has completed the book, so I want to err on the side of discussing it more generally. Even though I want to ask you very specific questions, but I'm afraid that it'll give things away. What do you think?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I trust on saving things. I think it's I think that makes sense.
Okay, great. And so I'll start with what you referenced before, which is we were college roommates, and we've known each other since we were late 18 or early 19, right? From the second half of our freshman year.
Yeah. And
I wanted to ask you, it's been, as I said before, it's been such a joy, and just to watch and be a part of your journey at points when we were in school, just to witness you every day versus obviously as time has passed, and life happens not as frequently, but as one would hope. But I wanted to ask you, what did you know of yourself as an author and your determination when you were 19?
That's a great question. Man, I remember, I have a really clear memory of the first story that I wrote for a writing workshop at college, and the workshop liked it, or people read it and were like, oh, I see what you're doing. And I remember giving it to you, and I think you shook my hand afterward and were like, I see what you're doing. I was so proud. I was like, oh, I think I can do this. Cause I've always loved reading. And so there's just that first thing where you sort of do the trick. I don't know if you have a similar thing with the first song that you wrote, or if it was a performance, or what their moment was. I mean, it's weird as a writer because you sort of don't know that it's working until somebody else reads it. I don't know if you can hear it yourself when it's a song, but
I think it's similar in that you have an idea, but you don't know for sure until someone else reacts to it.
Yeah, which feels counter to what people say about art, but I feel like it's just you don't really, it's like a kid who grows up or something. You don't really see it as a whole thing until somebody else interacts with it. But yeah, I mean, and that story, that the one that you shook my hand about, was, I think it was just a blatant ripoff of Grace Paley. I think I read a conversation of with my father and then rewrote it with my own, scenario, but basically it was using her structure and her style. so I feel like my early ideas of what I wanted to say or what I wanted to be were all responding to books that I had read and books that I had loved. And I think, so, with true story, there is like a lot of like pastiche and genre play. Like there's other sort of pieces of books and styles that come in with that, which probably has its roots in that impulse of like, I just want to be part of this like library, this like pantheon that I love. But then it took me a long time to then find my way to a coherent book and a coherent sort of piece that I could put out in the world the way true story is. So.
Mm-hmm. And did you know from the beginning with true story that it would be a pastiche of genres?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to play with two different perspectives, sort of a male and a female perspective around this kind of central rumor that's at the heart of the book. And as I was following these two characters, so the book follows two characters through 15 years of their lives, four characters really, but there's sort of two who speak most prominently. And they, as I was writing them at different parts in their lives, it was kind of a playful impulse to then thinking about like, how am I going to punish Nick? And there's sort of like a horror section that kind of came out of that impulse. And then it just felt bananas. I was like, the pieces were coming together, and I was like, I don't think that this is a book. Like, I don't think people are going to read this as a novel, that this is going to work, because it is so kind of like Frankenstein-y in like how the pieces fit together. But yeah, I really wanted to have those very different genres and voices, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And can you give us a sense of the timeline, or chronologically, where were we as a society when you started writing true story?
Yeah, so the true story started in early 2015, and it's basically the kind of thing that I had been, between like 2000 and 2015, so like my entire sort of like conscious post-puberty life was these just like trying to find a way to write about the periodic high-profile sexual assault cases and this sort of just like pervasive rape culture that would always, there would be this sort of like big kind of news, and there would be this sort of feeling of like, oh gosh, this is new, what are we going to do, this is horrible, and then it would like go away, and then it would sort of come back. And I was trying to find different ways to write about that for a long time, and I have some short stories and things that deal with it in different ways. In 2015, I'm trying to remember specifically, but basically I started the book a couple of years before Me Too, and then had finished a draft, but then was editing during Me Too, and then again, the final edits were finished right around the time when the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were happening. So it definitely feels like this book came out of we're in this kind of transformational moment, but also maybe not really in society. And it feels like it's hard to say like where we're at now, but yeah, it's where it came from.
And can you talk about navigating and deciding, if at all, if you would respond to, let's say, the Kavanaugh hearings, if you would allude to that, or if you would just stay the course that had been established?
Oh, it's such a good question. I really thought about, there were times, the first thing, there were some early drafts of this where the like noir elements were very over the top, and I was pulling myself back in, because I was like, this is too bonkers, like people are not going to believe that this happens, and you want to bring a certain level of or not the opposite of levity, like gravitas to this topic. And then like the Harvey Weinstein, all the revelations were just so bananas. Like the like hiring former massage agents to, anyway, like, so I felt like, oh, I didn't do enough. And the same with the Brett Kavanaugh, like he was such that whole, like when he produced his calendar, do you remember? And it was just like this, the lightest relax bro.
Oh God, yeah, I do. Yeah.
We don't have to talk about Brett Kavanaugh very long, but there's definitely those things. I don't know. I feel like when you Actually, I wonder if this ever happens to you with albums, but you sort of start to feel like things are happening in the world, like around, like you can just, it's like you're connected with the zeitgeist in this weird way. And then you're like, oh, it's not like I think I created something, but you just feel in tune with forces in a weird way.
I think I would feel quite fortunate if that ever happened. Sometimes I think I'm either it's either like my feelers aren't sensitive enough for the zeitgeist, or I did it. Yes, I think everything. I mean, it's hard to identify and parse out all the influence when when you're in the mode of creation. You're so open, you're so susceptible to everything, as you should be. And so and you're that way for an extended amount of time, so who knows what, everything that you're absorbing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think also, I mean, some of what I said might also just be my ego, but also there's a little bit of like, when you're thinking about that for so long, like that period of creation, like you're so focused on what you're working on, and then every time you see like a little piece of it, it feels like a bigger deal than like.
Right. Yeah. And then perhaps it is a message to you, a signal. And then, that's totally right. The Kavanaugh calendar, I think that's what made me, in those passages about the lacrosse team, and I'm not saying that, but this is what I'm, maybe you felt it coming and you captured it before it happened. But I think part of the discomfort that I feel in the thing that you intend, it really it conjures the hearing and that calendar and the
just the thing, it was, I think too, the thing I think about that trial or hearing or whatever it was, but the like that Kavanaugh was allowed, like you even like look for like screenshots of that time or like pictures of that time, and like his face is always just like pinched and frowning and he's like mad and like talking about beer, like he's always and I know it's sort of a performative bluster, right? Like he's on purpose kind of like performing outrage at how could he be questioned this way. And then Christine Blasey Ford is just this like Olympic level incredible performance, like so like the amount that she's balancing her emotion and her scientific knowledge, and like just I've told people before, like I feel like they were like telling two different genres of stories. Like they were like, their styles were as much part of the message as what they were saying itself. And like that is the thing that makes me almost angry. I mean, everything makes me angry, but that makes me so angry that like the way they talk can't even be equitable in any way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You bring up this idea of performance, and I find that so fascinating. And I was hoping you could discuss the incorporation of performance in the character development of all of your main characters.
Oh, that's interesting. Like the performance and the right, or the way that they are performing their selves. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And was that a consideration?
Yeah. I mean, I think the book is really about a lot of it is about it's about like storytelling, like I said, like it's about how we sort of shape our stories about ourselves and how other people shape us and how stories control us. And so there's that second section in the book that is a character's college application essays, and she's going through multiple drafts of the same essay. So you sort of see each draft as she's going. I thought of that section when you said performance, because that, like writing that felt more like acting than than writing normally does. The section also has her teacher, or like her counselor, is like writing notes in the margins of her essay draft. So you sort of see these two characters in like a different physical way. And so that writing process felt like performance in a different way than I'm used to, and was really satisfying to write. But I think that I mean, it's my favorite section. I think it's really heartbreaking. And it is about what you're saying. It's about the performance and the way that this like young woman is learning to perform the story of herself that she is being told is the acceptable story, is the story that's going to get her into college. And she's sort of, and so you sort of see that wrestling going through. I don't know, that feels really, I feel like that's like a rich vein, like there's more to do with that, in terms of, I mean, we're all so hyper focused on self presentation with social media, and maybe even more so now that we're all like on Zoom all the time. But I just think the way that we, the difference between like ourselves and the way that we present ourselves is really rich and interesting and heartbreaking in interesting ways.
Mm-hmm. And you know, you did such a remarkable job of presenting and rendering these characters, and I wanted to ask you about the process. How do you create such distinct characters, and what is the process of developing their lives so that the reader gets such a rich sense of them?
Yeah, I pull their astrology charts first off. I really start with the voice is the thing that always kind of opens the story for me. So the like the style, and especially in true story, because every section is in a different voice, the writing style is really different. I sort of, the first inspiration is some kind of a speaking voice, and that character is kind of embedded in that. So the way that they speak is is like the opening into like how they're thinking, and also what they're going through at that particular moment. I think about, there's another section called To Us, where there's a character, Alice, who is fleeing an abusive or sort of controlling relationship. And she's writing emails to an old friend and sort of like trying to tell this story about like what happened. And when I started writing that voice, all of her sentences are really clipped, and she doesn't use the subject. So she wouldn't really use the word I, she would just say like, woke up this morning, and just like kind of dive right into it. And so that voice is like, I feel like I'm getting really nerdy in writing practice or writing craft here, but like
that's why we logged on.
The voice is like the clipped nature is because she's like literally in hiding, and also she's like obscuring herself because she's in hiding, but then also trying to figure out how to like unearth that self again. So like the voice became the key to the like everything that the character is going through, and kind of like her drama at the same time. So yeah, that's how it starts.
Yeah, awesome.
Can I ask about when you write songs? I feel like I should.
Sure, but only if you want to. You don't have to. Yeah.
I just want to know if because you write songs that are in different characters' voices also. Mm-hmm. Do you start with like knowing that it's going to be a character's voice, or does it come from the lyrics?
I think every time I've written in another voice, I've known it would come from another voice, because the idea of the song wouldn't have was intrinsically linked with coming from that different perspective.
Got it. Yeah.
You know, you referenced Grace Paley earlier, and I want to, you know, I know that you know this. I'm endlessly indebted to you for introducing me to Grace Paley, because she became such an influence for my lyric writing as well. And you know, so you made me a huge fan, but at that time it was so important to feel so close to and so aligned with something. And I think, you know, she's like an outsized figure to me.
Yeah.
Because of you. So I thank you for that. But I say that only to preface this question, and if I'm going out on a limb, just pull me back, okay?
Okay.
But can you talk about the Grace Paley influence on Idiot Nick?
Oh, that is amazing. That's totally true. Do you think there is? Do you think that's true? I believe you.
I sense it, but I don't know if only it's just because I want to, because I know you. But yeah, no, the way the dialogue happens, the way
Yeah.
at the pace of it, the economy of it, and there's so much the dialogue that informs and moves all of it so well.
Yeah.
But there's just there's such a you know, the heartbeat of that
And it
just
is
reminded me.
it's like a couple, a man and a woman, who have been in love and now can't communicate and are communicating in a very like pretty like kind of funny but also like heartbreaking way.
Yeah, and deeply aggrieved, and there's so much tension. But it's like the library, but you know. Okay,
Yeah.
so I didn't prepare well enough to
No.
present the titles of the short story, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Grace Paley with the library finds.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't remember the title of it either.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm going to pull us back here because we're just going to do this another time.
No. I think I'm so. I mean, I do. Part of me is like part of me is embarrassed because, as I said, like ever since my first story, I feel like I've just been trying to be Grace Paley. But at the same time, I'm deeply honored to hear that influence and that you saw that. I mean, you're an incredible reader and like a very prolific reader, Thao, and so it's like means a lot to hear you see that in the book. And I see it. I think you're right. I think it is, and it takes place in New York. But yeah, I feel like it. That voice, like I guess what I'll say is that like what Grace Paley. I mean, she I feel like I've learned so much from her, but there is, I mean, she is a voice-driven writer for sure. Like the voice of each story is so clear and is I think the key into the character. And I think with Nick, I mean, it's interesting too to think about like him at that stage. So it's sort of near the end of the book. So he has, I hope, sort of come a little bit beyond the sort of idiot Nick of the beginning is like a new kind of idiot Nick at the end, and like a little bit wiser and sad, like a Paley character. So that's cool. Yeah.
Well, I brought that up only, I didn't think it was dangerous only because you have obviously you've demonstrated your acumen with all kinds of, with all genre, with so many different approaches and styles. So to me, it just was like, I thought it was just a sweet nod, you know, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your affinity and history with the horror genre.
Yeah. I feel like I could spend a whole hour talking about horror movies. I'm not sure how exciting it would be. I mean, I feel like I have this feeling like horror movies are like the cool kids club. I think part of this is because my big brother has always loved horror movies. And so I've always been like a little bit of I guess I have a little sister relationship to horror movies, where I like want to be part of the club. I definitely, I'm more on the scaredy cat side of things, but I have seen a lot and I really like watching them. But I don't, yeah, so I love horror movies, even though I'm like terrified going into them. When I was writing this book, I was thinking about somebody who like me, who like kind of wants to read like the Wikipedia summary of every horror movie and kind of know what it's about. So I feel like that's the level of scary that this book is. Like it plays with horror, but it doesn't really get that bad. I hope. Yeah, I don't know. And I think too, like horror is just such like an interesting genre. I mean, like what what Jordan Peele did with Get Out, I think has sort of like blown it open for everybody. Nia DaCosta is doing really amazing work right now. But like the potential to work through really serious social things in this like kind of exaggerated horror tenor, I think is really powerful. And I really like the smart things that can be done in that space. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And it was the perfect amount for someone like me as well. And I loved that even if you were not my friend and I picked this book up, which I would, and I just trusted you from the beginning to take me wherever you would, but to make sure that, like, as you said, to do it in a way, the things you appreciated about those writers that you just mentioned, that to do it in a smart way, to do it in a thoughtful, considerate way that conveyed what you needed to convey without being excessive.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you to discuss what it is for a reader to trust a writer.
Oh, I think that's vital. Yeah. Man, I mean, I was thinking about this. This is not exactly answering your question for a second, but I'm stalling to give myself time to think about the smart question that you asked. But I was with horror movies, one thing that gets me through is that the convention of the genre is that there's always a little set piece. There's almost always a little set piece at the beginning, and it's very scary, but it tells you how scary the movie is going to be. Like, I feel like it's a good indicator of like how gory and how much the movie is out to like startle you or upset you, or whether it's just going to be kind of creepy and interesting. And so I always feel like once I get through that first like 5 minutes of the movie, I'm like, okay, now I know what I'm in for. I guess with a novel, I think readers, I think we all do this kind of instinctively with a book. And I think it's the same where it's like in that first chapter, you have a sense if you're, if the writer is like I feel like as a writer, it's good to like give your audience like a little bit of a resolution or a little bit of character growth or a little bit of some kind of satisfaction that just says like, yes, I promise, like this is the kind of thing you're gonna go through this with me. I just read Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, and there's this like lovely scene early on where the main character is he's like betting that he can dry dishes faster than this other guy in a restaurant to like win an encyclopedia set. And so it's this like little piece of drama, and then he's betrayed because the encyclopedias are fake. And so it like, you just read that and it's almost like you get that little short story and you're like, oh, I can trust that this writer is like, it sounds cheap to be like, it's worth my time, or it's like, knows what they're doing. But like, you have to sort of, yeah, I don't know. And I'm only talking about the craft when I'm saying this too. Like, I'm not even saying about like the horror elements or dealing with like a sensitive topic or anything like that. I don't know. It's a really good question, Thao. It's like a really important thing.
Well, I mean, I love hearing you talk about the craft, and I wish we had more time actually to really dig into everything. But that's a great place to start the Q&A, and also to end our portion. But I do, yeah, anyway, I could ask you a ton of questions, but I didn't want to be greedy. So I'm going to look at this. And then Jacqueline, hello. Did you see Jacqueline's on here?
Jacqueline.
Okay, yeah, look, all three of these look great. I don't know if there's a curfew on this thing, but we're gonna close it down.
Also, just a shout out, Jacqueline said "was up" in the chat box back to us.
Friend, been too long. Okay, from Abigail Oswald. Can you talk about how you settled on the unique structure? Was it originally envisioned in that form, or did it come along later in the drafting process?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Abigail. I started out, what I started out with was chunks of stories that were in all these different voices. And so the structure itself came pretty late in terms of the book moves fairly chronologically through these 15 years. But I did know that it was going to be kind of this piecemeal kaleidoscopic structure the whole time. I knew that it was going to alternate between different voices and points of view. One thing, yeah, so it sort of like as I got more and more of the pieces written and the book was coming together, I think I mentioned this earlier, but like I sort of hoped that it would like coalesce into a more traditional structure somehow, or that something would happen to make it feel more expected. And actually, Thao, this goes back to your question too of like trusting a reader or trusting a writer, is because I do feel like this book pulls you in through. There's a couple of quick voice changes early on. So that's like, you're setting the reader up for what they're going to expect with this book. But also I'm grateful for every reader who kind of sticks with me through those kind of somersaults, because I think it is, I think it's unusual. So.
This question is also in line with that, and also in line with trust, and something I wanted to ask about too. Can you, Sarah Templin writes, can you talk a bit more about your research? I really appreciated the way you created a sense of place in each scene.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll say one thing. There's a house in the horror section that is based on it's a family house. It's my stepdad's house in West Virginia, which you know, and it's
Sure do.
it's not like the setting in the book, and that it's heated, for example. It's like it's a proper house. It's not haunted. It does scare me a lot at night when I'm there. It feels very like isolated. I'm more of a city kid, and it's strange to be out that rural. So a lot of the places in the book are places that I have, you know, the high school is kind of roughly mid-Atlantic Maryland, where I'm from. I read a couple of ethnography books about fraternities that helped when I was thinking about Nick's section early on. I love ethnography. I highly recommend that for writers researching. I think it's a really useful way to get research. And yeah, just life, I guess, beyond that. Yeah.
Jacqueline writes, can you talk about something you ultimately changed about the book? What changed or didn't make it in? Possible to answer that without spoilers?
Yeah. There was a part, trying to think of what's the best non-spoiler way to say that. I will say the title changed, actually. That's a good easy one that doesn't spoil anything. The original title for the book was Women's Fiction, which I liked because it plays on the genre and the idea of like lying and also about writing and writing a book. So it took a while to get True Story. But I'm very happy that we landed on True Story, because it's such a juicy, it feels like a noir movie to me. Like it feels like the title of a Raymond Chandler novel, or and it also, I've said this before, but it always sounds like something that like Nick would say, like, true story, bro. So.
Jacqueline, I'm going to come back to your Kindle question. Don't worry, I'm not going to miss that one. But there's another one. And forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce this name. But Petty, will you help me?
Sure. Is it Trolls?
Trolls?
Yeah, Trolls.
Thumbs up? Okay. Thank you, Trolls, for saying this. I'll just read it out loud because it makes us feel good. You're both super inspiring magic women that have known each other so long. So taking advantage of this, what is the most embarrassing memory that you remember about the other from college? And that is also revealing about your old friend. I was hoping something like this would come up. Okay. Do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
I got a couple. But your dad is watching?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm gonna go. I'll do the one. This I love this one.
Okay.
Okay, which is the English department had a book sale, and I think this was our senior year or junior year, and we were walking by, and Petty found a Grace Paley book. I can't remember which book it was.
I think it was
a collection.
At the last minute.
Yeah. Oh, incredible. And we bring it back to the house. Or I think maybe it happened right then and there, because as she was flipping through, there was a tiny little baggie of white powder. And it had perhaps been used as a bookmark. We don't know. And she takes it out. And before I can stop her, and I wasn't even going to stop her, she just takes some out and said, like, I saw this on Law and Order. Flicks her finger, sticks it in the white powder, dabs it on her gums, and is like, I think that's cocaine. And I was like, how do you know? And she said, because it's numb. because I can't feel my
so
gum.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, it's one of my favorite memories of all time.
I always felt like our college was very sleepy and very small, and like the English department was very, it didn't seem like the kind of place where you would find a baggie of cocaine.
Totally.
And a nice smelly book with like whatever.
Yeah. I mean, incredible. It's as though the universe was winking at you. It knew what was ahead. I got another one. I'm going to run it by you first in our code. I'm just going to do this thing. No.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, let's leave it. Let's put it on. We'll put up a paywall. What'd you say?
Can I tell the one about Red from the San Francisco? Do you remember the street musician?
No, please share.
We were in San Francisco in the summer, and I think we were down near Fisherman's Wharf, because we were just walking around the city all the time, like trying to not spend money and find ways to find coffee. And there was a street musician, he was playing a guitar, and he looked like Kinky Friedman. He was just a complete character and playing the blues. I think he had a slide on the guitar, and he was good. And I remember you were very excited about his playing. It was a really good musician. And so we were standing there watching. We gave him $1. And then he looked up and he was like, "Oh, they call me Red. What do they call you?" And you were like, "They call me Thao."
They do. They did, and they still do.
It was so great.
We're still as earnest as we ever were, I hope. This is from Impact Hub Baltimore. In a previous event, Kate mentioned that this book is inspired by events that happened during college. Can you both reflect on memories of that time and how those incidents influenced what you wanted to say in this novel?
Yeah, I should have brought this up with you before we talked. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you must do, but do you remember the senior year, there was the flyers that they posted on campus about, I know what you did last semester?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
So basically there were our senior year, there was sort of a string of sexual assaults on and around campus. And it was it made national news. They were all sort of they were not connected, but one of them happened at I think a sorority party, and there were charges pressed and then dropped. And immediately, as soon as the charges dropped, there was sort of the there's that libertarian kind of strain on campus, anyway, affirmative action, bake sales, and that kind of bullshit.
Right.
Somebody printed flyers that said, named the victim and said, I know what you did last semester, care to revise your statement, called her a liar, outed her. And it's so weird to think back, it was a time when dropped charges seemed like a different thing. Anyway, it was something I vaguely remembered. And then I spent some time this past spring, going back and looking through the archives from that time and what everybody was writing about it. I don't know. It's sort of shocking how I guess the world has changed in some big ways, just in terms of the people we knew and their perspectives on that and what had happened. Yeah.
Right. And how courageous and radical it would be to defend that person, or to stand on the side of or even to just acknowledge what was happening, or even to talk about it. I say that because I vaguely remember, but I don't know, certainly it was on the periphery of my consciousness, whereas something like that, there's so many things at this point, thankfully so, are front and center and have staying power in that realm. Yeah. I mean, I remember from our college days in general that it was difficult to be a feminist. Yeah. It was, and this has come, I majored in women's studies, minored. Why didn't I major? Stigma, right? Or something. Just, there was so much There were so many reasons and forces that unless you really were very certain of yourself and had an internal support system and an external one, it was, I applaud anyone from our college days who existed and vibrated at that level.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, from Laura Hart McKinney, can you talk about how the characters lived in your head all the time, sometimes, and all the time, sometimes? And did the characters in your head do things you didn't expect? Thanks for this book.
Oh, thanks, Laura. Yes, they live in my head. I think there is sort of there is that weird moment of when you're writing, you sort of have to I think of it like this is not gonna make any sense, but like the way a snake unhinges its jaw to swallow something big. I think about unhinging your brain a little bit or your consciousness a little bit just to let things happen. I think all of the everything Nick did in especially in the horror section was sort of unexpected. I was sort of he was going through the woods at this cabin, and yeah, he definitely feels like a character that feels separate from myself. He doesn't feel like something that I made, and which is weird. I have a weird relationship with Nick, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Thanks, Laura. Yeah.
Just as a side note, for all of you watching who know and love Kate Petty like I do, and also those of you who are jealous of us, when that's such a classic, that's such a Petty, when you say things like, you got to unhinge your mind, you unhinge your brain the way a snake unhinges its jaw. She's been saying things like this, these lightning bolts since we were 18. It is, and it's something I've always really appreciated. It's always inspired me. Your way with ideas and language. This is from Ben Kennedy. Hi, Ben. I'd like to know how you settled on the title. They tore down your lodge, but it's good to see the spirit is still alive.
They did. They tore down the house that Thao and I lived in together. Yeah, it was in conversation with my editor, Lindsay Schwarry at Viking, who's brilliant and so rigorous and thoughtful about sort of every detail of the book in an amazing way. I was really lucky to work with her. And we had a bunch of conversations about the title and about, women's fiction, that the original title it was the kind of thing that some people really loved, but then you would tell people, and I mean, for better or for worse, men would say I would never pick that book up. And so you want to reach people. And so, yeah, so when it was my editor in the UK sort of came up with True Story. And it was one that we the more we kicked around, just felt it revealed so many layers and felt really right. Yeah, titles are so important and so hard. It's so much to come up with a good one.
This is from JH. Is it the JH? Or different? No, different JH. Okay, I love how each genre section has its own mise-en page. Different fonts, layout, the annotations. Was that a hard sell with the publisher? Did you have to fight for it?
Yeah, man, it was not. I mean, the publisher, Viking, was so great. My book designer, Megan Kavanaugh, I hope I'm getting your name right, Megan. If not, I'm so sorry, but did an amazing job. And the production editor also were just put so much work and time into making each section different. The screenplays, everything. And I'm really grateful because I feel it's very important to sort of understand each section, is that you can see those words. So while you look at that, I'm gonna just double check Megan's last name because I feel so terrible because she worked so hard. I want to make sure I get it right. Yeah, Kavanaugh. I knew it. I was worried that I missed that. But thank you, Megan. Amazing.
See, this goes back to what your dad said, which is that you're so grounded. So true. Yeah,
Do that in the Q&A.
Yeah, it sure is.
Sure. Good job.
All right, we got time. We have just a few minutes. I think there's one more question from Jacqueline about Kindle, which I want to address because the format is important, and then we're going to wrap it up. Does the formatting translate to Kindle? I've recommended the book to some Kindle readers, and I've wondered if it carries over. Loved the college application drafts and notes.
Thank you. I think it does. Yeah. It again, to Megan's credit, it definitely it works. I think it's a little bit smaller, so you may struggle. Readers may struggle a little bit with that, but I hope that they stick with it because I think it does work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect.
Buy it in format. Just buy the book.
Yeah. Do you remember when you decided that your publishing name would be Kate Reed Petty?
Yeah, that's a great question. I originally was going to be K. Reed Petty. I have some early short stories with the K shortened, which I think came from that kind of like that sort of impulse of like, oh, I don't know if like women writers are taken this seriously. I don't want to be sort of seen as I don't want to be seen as a woman writer or sort of boxed in that way. And also I was really into The Great Gatsby, and I was like, oh, it's like F. Scott Fitzgerald. I'll just use my first initial. But I switched to Kate, I guess 5 years ago now, maybe right around then, just because I feel like my name is Kate, and I sort of I want people to like call me Kate, and so that's what I wanted to go with. I will say I would have just done Kate Petty from the beginning, but there is a children's book author who's British who is very prolific, and she has the lockdown on Kate Petty, so do that.
I asked that. I just wanted to clarify because I remember very vividly countless hours where we talked about our dreams for work, and you said, it was always, and I could see it. I just could see your name on the novel. And at that point it was K. Reed Petty, but I just, so when I got the copy of your book, it was just so remarkable. And I just know how hard you've worked and how amazing you've always been.
Buddy, thank you.
The Strand is never, sorry, the Strand. We'll wrap it up. I just want to, this is what I can contribute as a witness to your journey. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much, Thao. It means so much.
Okay, Jesus Christ. Anyway, y'all, thank you so much. And true story, Kate Reed Petty.
Thanks so much for doing this, Thao.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm intruding. That was so beautiful. It's so obvious that you guys have been friends for so long, and it's amazing. I love it. And for everyone who is watching, if you don't have a copy of True Story already, we have them at Strand. If you buy them with us, Kate is going to sign a postcard from a location in the book and include it with the book. So you'll get a signed postcard with your book if you order through Strand, which is really cool. A little like step up from a book plate. So signing books in real life is a little hard right now. But thank you both so much for doing this, for having this wonderful conversation and letting all of us be a part of it, because it's been a really wonderful night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea, for your help. Thanks to the Strand.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.